Hi there, I'm your host, Mr. Doyle, and this is a great undertaking. This is the last video in my series focused on Stephen King's sixth published book, The Stand, in which I will be discussing the 2020 TV series adaptation. The series was met with mixed reviews, and while it isn't my favorite adaptation of a King story, it's far from the worst, in my opinion. History and background. The production history of this adaptation spans a decade and, much like the original TV adaptation, contains a number of false starts, course corrections, and abrupt changes. Rumors of a new adaptation of The Stand began circulating as far back as 2011, with Warner Bros. Pictures and CBS Films supposedly considering making a feature-length film. In fact, writers and directors were in place to create a multi-movie version of The Stand, but the project was ultimately abandoned as it was agreed on that the immense novel would work better as a miniseries. In 2014, Josh Boone, whose filmography includes The Fault in Our Stars and The New Mutants, was hired to write and direct the adaptation. However, Boone intended to split his adaptation into 4 full-length feature films, rather than the proposed TV series. Boone reportedly wanted Christian Bale to play Randall Flagg and Matthew McConaughey for the role of Stu Redman. By the end of 2014, the script had been completed and pre-production was underway. Warner Bros. Proposed an 8-part Showtime miniseries to set up the story, which would lead into Josh Boone's 4 films. However, in 2016, the Stand project was put on hold and the rights reverted back to CBS Films. The following year, King talked of doing an extended TV series, and 2 years later, in 2019, a 10-hour limited series was ordered by CBS Television Studios to be broadcast on CBS All Access. The production was filmed in British Columbia, Canada, from September 2019 to March of 2020, and luckily the production completed filming a few days before it would have been shut down due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The production features Stephen King's son, Owen King, as a producer and writer. Owen King, like his father, is a published writer. However, it appears that The Stand was his first foray into writing for the screen. It has also been reported that Owen is working with Josh Boone on adapting the Clive Barker novel, The Great and Secret Show, for television, which is something I'm looking forward to. Ratings and reception. Critical reception for the 2020 series is varied, and at the time of writing, the show has an approval rating of 58% based on 50 critic reviews on Rotten Tomatoes. The general consensus is, despite an A-list cast and a smattering of poignant moments, The Stand's extended runtime doesn't make for better storytelling, leaving its expansive cast stranded in a cluttered apocalypse. The series performed less favorably in a Google audience rating summary, in which it scores only 2 out of 5 stars based on approximately 2,500 ratings. Is it by the book? As is always the case with screen adaptations, whether for feature films or multi-episode series, characters, locations, and events have been altered, omitted, or revised. This is to be expected and is the nature of the beast. However, there seems to be one recurring criticism relating to the order of events and the non-linear timeline that a majority of audience members were dissatisfied with. However, this is an issue that is virtually exclusive to those who have read the book. The show bounces back and forth within the timeline of events, with scenes moving between the past and present, rather than following the chronological order of the various character story arcs. Once we move beyond episode 5 or 6 and all of the essential origin stories are out of the way, this is no longer an issue, and the series doesn't suffer from this timeline ADD throughout all 9 episodes. However, I'm afraid that the method used to tell the story was enough to turn off a large number of audience members, which is unfortunate. Personally, this wasn't a deal breaker for me, as it was for a lot of fellow constant readers, but I can understand their reasoning. In a novel like The Stand, the journey is equally important to the destination, perhaps even more so. It is our chance to get to know and form relationships with the characters and to watch their transformation in real time as they embark on their epic quest. Imagine watching The Lord of the Rings, but instead of following Frodo's journey chronologically, it's all chopped up so that our heroes have already reached Mordor and the viewer is repeatedly thrust back in time only to be given little bits and pieces of the journey thus far. Considering King intended for The Stand to be an epic Lord of the Rings inspired quest, it does seem that perhaps it was unwise to focus less on the quest and more on the reformation of society in Boulder and New Vegas. In the second to last episode of the series, we are shown the fall of New Vegas and of Randall Flagg. While the outcome is the same, the tactics and means used to bring about the fall of Flagg's fledgling empire are different from that of the novel, and consequently the fates of some of the story's main protagonists are still met, just in a different way. Aside from the major change to the presentation with the order of events and the reimagined ending, there are a few moderate changes to characters ranging from arbitrary gender swaps to lessened or in some cases increased importance of a character to the overall story. My biggest gripe with this series was the final episode. I assume this was the new ending King had written that was being hyped up, but it genuinely felt tacked on and like an unnecessary, inconsequential episode. I won't go into detail, but this series should have ended after episode 8, and that seems to be the general consensus among my fellow King enthusiasts. Cast and acting. In the same fashion as the video for the 1994 miniseries, I'm going to give a few brief thoughts on each major character while only looking a little more closely at two specific characters. The protagonists. James Marsden did a fantastic job as Stu Redman. Marsden felt right at home in the role. Odessa Young was alright as Franny Goldsmith. I didn't dislike her performance, but wasn't entirely sold on her. Jovan Adepo is a strong actor who gave a solid performance as Larry Underwood. Henry Zaga had a brooding intensity about him, and he did well considering his lack of dialogue as Nick Andros. Irene Bedard did well in the role of Ray Brentner, however the character was tragically underdeveloped for someone who plays such a pivotal role. Brad William Hankey plays Tom Cullen, and he looks exactly like Walter from The Big Lebowski. He does a good job in the role, but he doesn't get the screen time he deserves. Greg Kinnear as Glenn Bateman was perfect casting. Kinnear's portrayal is spot on, even if he is a bit young for the role. I was apprehensive at best when it was announced that Whoopi Goldberg would be playing Mother Abigail. Perhaps her time and a few choice comments she has made on The View had left a bad taste in my mouth. But I have to admit she was kind of perfect in the role. I suppose I'd forgotten that prior to becoming a daytime TV talk show host and the yin to Meghan McCain's yang, Whoopi was a legit actress. She's acted in almost 100 feature films, starred in numerous theatrical performances, and is one of only 16 people in history to win an Emmy, a Grammy, an Academy Award, and a Tony. Anyway, Whoopi nails the role and delivers an excellent performance. The antagonists. Owen Teague's portrayal of Harold Lauder is unquestionably the strongest performance of the entire show. I absolutely loved Owen's performance. Amber Heard's performance as Nadine Cross was kind of bland. She had her moments, but overall she didn't have the intensity I felt this character needed. Nat Wolff delivered a solid performance as Lloyd Henreid, and I felt he was successful at being equal parts detestable and pitiable. Catherine McNamara as Julie Lawry was a great casting choice. McNamara can be sweet and then turn on a dime. Ezra Miller's portrayal of Trash Can Man was my least favorite performance of the show. Miller portrays Trash Can as an absolutely manic, craven lunatic who shrieks like a velociraptor, which is not at all who he is in the book. I mean, I don't entirely blame Miller. He was likely following direction here, but it just doesn't work for me. And finally, we have Alexander Skarsgård as none other than the Dark Man himself, Randall Flagg. While I knew who Alexander was, I had never actually seen anything he was in prior to The Stand, at least not that I could remember. I was initially disappointed by the casting decision, but only because I had genuinely hoped for Flagg to be played by someone notoriously known for their ability to be diabolical and someone who was just scary on sight. Skarsgård just seemed too young and pretty. Honestly, after decades of having constructed an image of what Flagg looks like in my mind, I wanted this grizzled, worn-down, intimidating actor, and Skarsgård just didn't fit the bill. At first, I blamed the comic book adaptation for my bias against Skarsgård's appearance, but listen to King's description of Flagg in the novel and tell me if you think Skarsgård fits this description. It was the face of a hatefully happy man, a face that radiated a horrible, handsome warmth, a face to make water glasses shatter in the hands of tired truck stop waitresses, to make small children crash their trikes into board fences and then run wailing to their mommies with steak-shaped splinters sticking out of their knees. It was a face guaranteed to make barroom arguments over batting averages turn bloody. Frankly, I just didn't get those vibes from Skarsgård, and it's safe to say that is not an opinion which is exclusive to me. However, I had a similar reaction when Skarsgård's brother Bill Skarsgård was cast as Pennywise in the It movies, but my concerns were unfounded after he absolutely killed it in that role. So I had hope that his brother would likewise rise to the occasion. And, well, Alexander was, in my opinion, just all right. His hipster aesthetic and rugged good looks aside, his performance, while not bad, just wasn't what I wanted it to be. He never struck fear into my heart or made me feel the lever of terror. He never struck fear into my heart or made me feel the level of terror that a character such as Flagg ought to elicit. I don't know. To be fair to Skarsgård, his inability to live up to my expectations is not a reasonable reflection of his aptitude as an actor, because my expectations were likely unreasonably high. I'm sure that I would have felt the same way about any number of actors cast in this role, and I want to give Skarsgård the credit he deserves. Even if his portrayal wasn't the one I wanted, it wasn't an inept or entirely lackluster performance. Special effects. The makeup effects in this show are great. The victims of Captain Trips have the requisite inflated tube neck and look dismayingly gross. However, there are very few corpses displayed throughout the series, which is strange, considering we're talking about over 90% of the US population being wiped out, and yet there's nary a corpse in sight. Also, Mother Abigail is aged significantly, and while it may be a little overdone at the end, it's not terribly done. There are two scenes that have standout special effects, one of which involves an explosion, and the other a long fall from a tall building. I will refrain from giving too much away here for those unfamiliar with the story, as both instances are pivotal moments, but the execution of these specific scenes is stunning and expertly done. Soundtrack and score. This show has no shortage of excellent, recognizable, and well-placed music, from alternative rock icons like Radiohead, Weezer, and REM, to classic rock legends Black Sabbath, Jefferson Airplane, and of course the very appropriate use of Blue Oyster Cult's Don't Fear the Reaper, as well as In the Court of the Crimson King by King Crimson. I consistently enjoyed the music selections. That may have something to do with the fact that I was raised on classic rock radio and was an alternative rock junkie in the 90s, but beyond my personal taste in music, the songs all worked well within the context of the scenes they were selected for, even if they were a little on the nose at times. In terms of the score, while it has all the hallmarks of a traditional horror or suspense score, there were some more unconventional choices made that gave this show's ambient background sounds and orchestral arrangements their own unique flavor. Acoustic guitars drenched in reverb, twanging southern-inspired lap steels, angelic legato woodwinds, triumphant symphonic strings, and tense, panicked soundscapes provide layers of dramatic, emotionally provocative moments. While they're not necessarily reinventing the wheel, composers Nathaniel Walcott and Mike Mogis craft a balanced and impactful score. Final thoughts. Regardless of its shortcomings, primarily that of the order in which the stories Regardless of its shortcomings, primarily that of the order in which the events of the story are portrayed, or the show's inability to fully meet my expectations, I enjoyed this series for the most part. I felt that the essence of the story and that of the vital characters remained intact, and the performances were predominantly solid. It seems most people prefer the original TV series, and while I do enjoy this version to some extent, I don't think I could say that this remake is the better of the two versions with any conviction. Alright, that's all for this series. Up next, I will be digging into the second Bachman book, The Long Walk, which is a dystopian novel of authoritarianism, social Darwinism, classism, and the benefits of appropriate footwearism. New videos drop on this channel every Saturday at 10 a.m. New videos drop on this channel every Saturday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, so please subscribe and join me as I wade through the vast cesspool of all things Stephen King. Okay, goodbye. Be sure to click like and subscribe to the channel for my continued analysis of all things Stephen King, pretty please with blood and guts on top. My name is Mr. Doyle, and this has been a great undertaking. Okay.